Hey guys, my name's Crystal Kenny, and I'm in love with creating. All things artistic and imagination involved. I'm an American girl who chased her creative dreams all the way to Paris, France, making a living using photography. This podcast takes you inside the stories of all the artsy folks I've met along the way and gives you that extra push to discover your creative gifts. The desire to create is deeply inside each and every one of us, and I give you the tools and inspiration to find a new way of living a more creative life. This is La Vie Creative, the podcast. My guest today is a real Francophile. She graduated from Yale University with a double major in history and French, but now she has started a platform called Art and Style. On this platform, she talks about art, fashion, and the food scene in Paris. And I talked to her today about how things are changing in France and where to find out new information. My guest today is DEVYANI Aggarwal. All right, so welcome to the show, DEVYANI. I'm so happy to have you here. I've been watching you on social media, and what you've created is really wonderful and fascinating, and you're bringing together so many different concepts on one platform. You've created Art and Style, which we're going to talk a little bit more about today, and we're going to talk about how much France has changed your life and inspired you as well, because we were talking about that before I hit the record button. So let's get started and chat a little bit about who you are, where you're from, and what you created.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm a big fan of you, and I love all the work you're doing as well. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. And so talk a little bit about Art and Style. What was this concept you came up with and why?
So Art and Style is a platform that was inspired by my love of everything art, fashion, and food in and around Paris. And it's an evolving project, I feel, but it's something that I've been very invested in and thinking about starting for a while, but I think because of my academics and my work, it hadn't sort of taken off. And finally, I had some time. I was supposed to be in Paris right now, but since I couldn't, I felt that in today's day and age, I feel like digitally it's so possible and more than possible. I think you can just transport yourself to any sort of location or state of mind even, and for me Paris is a state of mind, definitely. And so I felt like if I could make that happen for more people by combining it with my love for all things creative, I thought that this would be a great way to do that.
I love the idea. And what exactly can people do on the platform? Can you talk a little bit about the different parts of it?
Sure. So I felt that, so I've always been fascinated with magazines. Like even when I was a little girl, I would just love opening up, like my mom would get all these women's magazines or fashion magazines. And I would open them up and I would always love to see the stories, what's the latest like food trend, or like, of course, like there were fashion trends, and there were always these like little snippets that I would love, like little interviews. And I just felt like I loved everything about just journalism, lifestyle journalism. And so I always dreamt of, being in that space. And then when I started thinking about it myself and I was like, okay, what can I do here? I thought, well, today I don't know who's reading all of those magazines. I don't know if the little girls and the teenage girls and the big girls, anyone, like I don't know who's reading these magazines really, because we spend so much time on our phones and laptops, and mostly phones. But I think consumption of media is so digital, and I felt like, why not make this a multi-dimensional project? And so I have one part of this is my blog, which is more long form content, something more on the lines of what you would find in a traditional magazine or even digital magazine, which is blog posts and sort of like longer pieces, like long form journalism basically, or list posts, or things that people would Google, I guess. And then I have my social media, and that's mainly Instagram right now, though I have plans for it, which will eventually materialize. So my social media, I call it my bite-sized magazine, because I feel like it brings together everything that's traditionally in a magazine, which is something like a nice editorial piece or an advertisement, or and then little quizzes or little interviews, the ones that I was referring to earlier. So those are some ideas that I'm trying to bring together through this page, and I do feel like it's just a slice of sort of like creative life in and around Paris that people can access whenever they want in their pockets for free. So I felt like that was sort of my motivation behind this.
I think it's such a great idea because, like we talk about in the podcast, there's always so many creative things happening, creative people that we can highlight, and exhibitions. There's so many things happening all the time. And if there was some kind of application or something like that, that people could just look and say, okay, what's on this weekend, or who's the big deal right now in Paris? I think that's such like a great idea because a lot of times, even for myself, I'm searching because that's one thing I really noticed about the French, like the local French are not so great with technology. It's usually us foreigners who are making the websites, making the apps, making the blogs. Did you find that yourself with French people?
I did actually. I think there's this idea of marketing in my head, which I find very exciting, and this idea of promoting people that I think are doing such a great job, similar to what you're doing right now. I feel like it's such a nice
Yeah.
feeling to be recognized by someone, but I didn't feel like that came very inherently to the French businesses or the French brands that I wanted to work with. It definitely felt a little bit contrived in the beginning, and then I sort of had to convince myself for that, like no, this is like a good thing. Um, but I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
they're getting more open. I think, in fact, what I really love about Paris and Parisian brands and creatives and artists is that they find very at the heart of it, like creative and sort of out of the box sort of ways of promoting themselves. So I think the
Mhm.
traditional Instagram format, and I think that sort of inspires me also to do something new with it. Um, so yeah, I mean, to answer your question, I think that's true to an extent, but I think it's changing in some ways because of the kind of influences that you're talking about, of like different sort of like the foreign gaze on Paris and France is just so excited, I guess. Like it's just so like we want to cover everything. You guys are awesome, and I think they're like, yeah, I guess we are. Let's do it ourselves. I mean, I hope.
Yeah, I like that they're finally taking charge because I felt like for the longest time they were just unaware in a way. Like they like Paris isn't as awesome for them because they come here to work in some
Yeah.
ways, and for foreigners it's just like a dream. So I love that they're finally being inspired because they're seeing all these other people write books and make
Hmm.
websites, and then it's like, wait a minute, I am a French person. I know what I'm talking about. I was curious, like when you tried to reach out to these companies, did they want to engage? Were they kind of like, I don't know, or I'm not good
Hmm.
enough, or whatever? I get that a lot from French people. Like they
Uh,
feel like they can't be interviewed until they've won an Emmy or something. Like
I think they're very open to it now because especially in these times, I feel like it's so easy for people not to access creativity. And I think they
Mhm,
pick up on that. And I think obviously, like maybe business reflects that, or well, we're in a time when people literally cannot access these services. So I think there's also the compulsion to sort of get the word out there. And I think if there's
mhm,
people genuinely invested in that mission, in a very sort of like, again, like a very honest way, I think there's always the opportunity to collaborate. And I think that's something I'm seeing all over social media with creatives and influencers. And till even like 5 years ago, this was something that was a very sort of like vague area of collaboration, I guess.
mhm,
In terms of like, what do these people do? Or like, what do, I just never felt comfortable because I feel like this is where all conversations are happening. I think creativity leads to so much more than just like engagement with a brand. It sort of like leads to this relationship building, which
mhm,
is something our generation is really experiencing actively. So I think they're also seeking that participation in society in more than an economic, and more of a, how do I say, okay, this is where I have to pause. They see themselves more as providers of a service, if that makes sense.
yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I completely agree. Social media is connecting people more than ever, even though we are kind of disconnected from real life because we're always on screens now. At the same time, I hear so many people saying, oh, I connected with this person I would normally never meet. It's kind of like online dating in a way. You're finding people that you wouldn't run into in your everyday life, which I find fascinating. And it sounds like that's been a great tool for you too.
It's been great. And I think though there is fine balance. I think this is a means and definitely not the end for me, because I think all the things I talk about, whether it's art, fashion, or food and sometimes beyond, I think they're all very sensory experiences. They're very you have to taste the pastry in order to experience it fully. Like you have to be there in front of a piece of art and experience it in like the Musée d'Orsay or whatever. Like I just feel that experience it's not a complete experience, definitely. But I think what it is education. It's awareness and it's access to the existence of something. And what I really like about again, like blogging and social media is that you're so independent to sort of pick, choose, and curate what you would like to put out there for people to see, because I think everyone has a perspective, and Paris is a city that's always had multiple perspectives, and I think each of them has its own unique identity. It's like a bottomless pit. It's like you can always have your own experience of Paris to share, and I think each one of them is so important, and I think I bring something unique, as does like someone else. So I think that's a very special thing about just the whole region and the how inviting it is to someone like me or another creative.
Yeah, that's the question I ask every one of my guests is, why do you think creatives are attracted to France? And what do you think about that? Why do you think creative people come to France?
Well, okay, so this might be a little bit personal because I was a history and French major, and so I think the sort of history of Paris really attracts me. And whether it's and I'm also very I think aesthetics matter to me a lot, and Paris is heaven for someone like that. And so whenever I'm there, I just think that there's something very surreal about that attraction. Whether it's the paintings, the building, the food, I just feel, again, I think I would use also the word sensory.
Mhm.
There's this involvement of like a whole person in the city, even if you're like literally smelling like all sorts of aromas in some places that you don't want to smell. I feel like there's always a way to be fascinated by the aesthetics of the city and the history of the city, and that sort of seeps into the culture of the people and how they conduct their lives. And I
Mhm.
think a lot of these ideas that I'm talking about are probably repeated. I mean, like books have been written about this and continue to be written about this, and people know this. But I think it's for a reason that that sort of aura is created around the city, because I'm sure more than a couple people have experienced that in order to give it that kind of validation.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's been a million books written and a million blogs and all the photos, and there's obviously something going on here because it's not like you're getting the same thing happening in like
Mhm.
Ohio. Like it's obviously this is a place that
Mhm.
bringing that energy to people.
And Crystal, the beautiful thing is that it's not like we're talking about the same Paris. Paris changes, and Paris has changed over time so much. I mean, I really love Lindsay Tremuta's book on Paris, the new Paris, and now she has a new book, New Parisian. And I feel like those perspectives are just so interesting, because we're not talking about the same Paris that was Paris 10 years ago or 20 years ago, or the Paris that you see in guidebooks, where everyone has a very different version of it, and still there's that sort of attraction to it. Even if we're critical at some point, like I think there is that desire to sort of talk about it, and it comes from this sort of deep fascination with it. I'm really happy to see this diversity of opinions and sort of like experiences that are shared, and I guess mine is one of them.
Yeah, yeah, it's really nice. I love Lindsay's books for those reasons too, because she's giving a different point of view, because we've always heard
Mhm,
like, French women are skinny and they smoke cigarettes in
mhm,
Paris and the cafes, but she's talking about a different side, which is kind of refreshing. And like you
mhm,
said, like more and more people are bringing their own experiences and creating this environment. So it's kind of cool to see everyone's impression based on
Mm-hmm.
what they've experienced here.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious, how do you define creativity yourself?
Hmm. Creativity. It's so many things to me, but I think most importantly, I think creativity is it's a gift. I think it's a gift. And I think each one of us has the gift. I think the only sort of distinguishing factor, I guess, when you think about creativity and how people use it is I think where and when they choose it. And I think when one chooses to use this gift, I guess, I think it's a very magical outcome that you get. I think and I think it also depends on what stimulates your creativity inside of you. So if if I'm in a city like Paris, like I feel most creative in environments that stimulate that sort of feeling that I should be using this sort of skill or gift that I have. But for someone else, it could be somewhere else or some other situation. So I think it's something a very unique experience for each person. Um, I mean, I hope I'm not being too vague about this,
No,
but
no, I love it. No, you're completely right. It's different for everybody. And I'm wondering if you think that, I mean, this might be going a little too deep, but I'm curious because you're kind of a creative, passionate person like myself. Do you think that creativity is kind of could be the purpose of life, like discovering our gifts and sharing them with others? Or do you think that creativity can be not shared just as much? Like you can just do it for yourself?
a very interesting question. I think it's both. I think creativity is something that's sometimes best cultivated when you're all alone and you just are sort of, in the dark, and it's like that light that calls out to you, and it's that aha moment. So sometimes it's that, and I think it's a progression actually, and once you have a series of those aha moments or even one of them, you feel so excited you want to share it with the world, and then that aha moment leads to multiple other experiences for you that will be collaborative and joint. But I think it's definitely a back and forth, and I think like creative people are very, I think, hardworking and also very, I've seen this about myself, like delusional in some ways. It's like I have to make this happen. It's like, of course, like this is the idea, like of course. So there's this and I think I love it. Like I love that sort of like, and that's how great things happen. I feel like creativity could be something that a scientist could have, it could be something an artist could have, but it's definitely something that there's definitely a certain kind of person that identifies as creative.
Mhm,
So,
mhm.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that it's funny because we always think of creatives as just, the painter
Yeah.
or the writer. But like you said, it goes so much further, like scientists, people inventing things. That's all creative. So I think it's important we keep that in mind when we talk
Mhm.
about creativity. It doesn't have to be one thing. It's basically just creating something new.
Mhm.
And do you have advice for others who are trying to discover their creative gifts?
Hmm. Well, I think a very important part of being creative is being patient. So I mean, I always have this tendency to like sort of get too excited about an idea, and then I feel sometimes it starts to fizzle out after I realize that there's like a lot to be done to make this happen. So I think I have to sort of like talk myself through it. And I think like perseverance, like I think it's very important to know who you are and sort of like know where you want to take your creative gifts. And also be open to new ideas. So I think just being persistent about pursuing an idea, but at the same time being open to like changing course. I think that's been a very important lesson for me, definitely, because it's taken me to places that I didn't originally imagine with any idea. Um, and yeah, it's been very helpful to have like sort of dedication, but also an open mind.
Hmm, hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. I think you just kind of have to go down the rabbit hole and see where you land. And like you said, some ideas get abandoned and then some you can
Yeah,
finish. But
totally. Like there's so many drafts that never, saw the light of day. And maybe someday they will. So also like keep an ideas folder always. Like always
yeah.
stash them somewhere. Don't get rid of them. Like you never know. It might inform another project, or And I think it's a continuous project. Like, I think like there's so many parts to each person. Like, you never know. I don't think you should see creativity or any creative project as an end in itself. It's always going to
Mhm.
inform something, your personality, your other job, your side gig. I don't know. So I think I definitely see it as something like a creative muscle that, like, people who work out every day, like, I think you have to similarly exercise that creative muscle like every day.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, that's so true. I think the same thing goes for confidence as well, because a lot of artists suffer from the
Mhm.
imposter syndrome and not thinking they're good enough. So just like that, confidence is a muscle as well. You have to practice
Mhm.
every day, and it grows along with your creativity.
Exactly. And I think depending on yourself foremost for validation, I guess. Like, I think, some people might call it egoistic or whatever, but I think unless and until you believe that you've given your best to your idea, I think that's the only way to survive in this world, and, continue that creative journey.
I agree. That's great advice. And talking about like obstacles and people that may block
Mhm.
you on your creative journey, you are from India, correct?
I
And
am.
how did your family feel about you wanting to go to France and you wanting to start this new venture? And I mean, obviously, you're very smart as well. You went to Yale University, you had a double major in history and French, and you're going to be attending law school in America, correct?
Yes. Yes.
So you're a busy woman. So I guess your parents be like, oh, well, she can go to law school, but she can also dabble in Paris. Or how do they feel about all that?
My parents are like, they're just so supportive. Like, everything I've ever said, I'm very, very lucky. Like, I owe everything I've done to them, because even if they don't speak French, and they have they're doctors, and they have a very different sort of like, I would say I'm a very lateral thinker. They are extremely linear thinking people, like, because my training and like their interests have been different, but they have supported me along the way like rocks, and they continue to be my rocks, and I'm very grateful for that. And I do think I'm glad you brought that up, because I feel like when you talk about perspective and French culture, I just never found people like me from like India. I think there were always these expectations, like, are you pre-med, or like, there
Yeah.
were just always these boxes that you're put into, I think. And I think it was a little bit hard to sort of explain to people, no, like, I'm not studying colonial history right now. Like, I'm actually just studying like the French decorative arts. Like, I think that's okay. So I think that those are some things that used to worry me a little bit. But I think I just found my own niche, and I was very adamant about like what my interests are. And I think unless I'm genuinely interested in something, I don't feel I can do it very well, and they know that. And when I said like I just love France and French culture, and they were like, it's like, if you love it, if it gives you happiness, and you can see yourself doing something that matters to you with it, like, we're behind you. Like, and I know that a lot of people don't have that support, and I'm really happy I have it. And yeah, I'm just very grateful for that.
Yeah, you're super lucky because so many parents from all around the world, it doesn't matter what
Mhm.
country, would say, okay, you need to figure something else out so you can make some money.
Uh,
So it's always nice when you have a supportive tribe at home.
I think it's also nice for them, because it's like, I mean, I'm not trying to sound selfish, but it's like, if you have like someone who's talking about arts and culture, and food and wine, like, and like, you're just like curious, and you really don't want to pick up a whole book about it. I just yap, and it's like dinner table conversation is so fun again. Or like,
Yeah,
you throw
they
in a
have
few
someone
French
to
lessons
entertain
in
them.
there.
Oh, that's so cute. I love that your parents are like that. You're entertaining them.
Totally, and I'm very, very happy too. Also, they get to try French food. I mean, I love to cook,
Yeah.
and when I was in Provence, I was studying in Aix-en-Provence for a semester, and so I remember I came back after that semester. I'd done these cooking classes and these wine classes, and it was a feast at home every day. Like, I was just applying all my like knowledge in the kitchen, and in New Delhi, we were sitting and having like, I don't know, boeuf bourguignon or something. And then they're like, "Oh, that's interesting." Like, is that how they make it there?
I love that you brought home France with you. I mean, how cool is that?
Everywhere I go.
Yeah, you take a little piece of France with you. And do you feel there's a place in Paris specifically that is great for absorbing creative energy? Is there somewhere in Paris
Hmm.
you like to go to really feel like you're inspired?
Wow, there's so many. But yeah, so I think one place that's very special to me is the 11th arrondissement, because I
Mhm.
lived there when I was working in Paris. I was working there at a law firm right after graduation, and that was the first time I was living there as a working professional. Like I'd always just studied there and researched there, and it was all very flowery to me. And I think when I actually had my own apartment there, and I think it's a very different experience. And and it was just such a diverse community of people, just so beautiful in a very non-typical way. Like when you think of that, I think, yeah, like the surroundings were just so um messy beautiful. I really loved the whole area, um and just living there and sort of like talking to people and getting to know just the streets and sort of like roaming. It's a very busy quarter in some ways, but not like tourist busy. It's very Paris, local Paris busy,
Yeah,
which I
it's
love.
so nice to go to those local places as well and get a real feel for Paris.
And the food, I mean, amazing. It was so good.
Yeah, really good and different. And is there somewhere you go to get your creative resources? Is there websites you use or
Mhm.
books, or where do you draw your creativity from?
I actually go everywhere. I mean, the honest answer is um I think the more I read on topics that I don't even know about, I think I just try to read any and everything. But to be more specific, I do like to like listen to a lot of podcasts, yours included. I listen to the Eiffel Tower by Oliver. I listen to a lot of like Paris based podcasts. Um, and so that's one resource, definitely. And then I also use Instagram, obviously, like for like professionally, I do use it as well. But I think even to draw inspiration, just like looking at, I think it's just so dynamic. And to look at influencers, whether they're in fashion or in food, I think that I'm very into Paris food media, like because I speak French, so I always go to like it's a way for me to practice my language as well. But I always go to like France Culture or like a lot of these journalists in fashion or food, or like who are Parisian, and they have a very obviously quote unquote authentic like vision and approach to the creative scene in Paris. And I think it's a very good place for me to learn. If I'm communicating the creative scene in Paris to a wider audience, I should be following the people who are actually making it. So I think following a lot of the artists, female artists, and especially they're just so talented, and then a lot of the food journalists, a lot of the fashion influencers. It's really fun. It's really nice to see. And a lot of the important conversations, in fact, about just life, politics, sustainable, like everything is happening there. So I think just identifying a few people whose lives are interesting or whose work is interesting, and sort of like following their platforms. And I'm being very candid here. It's just like I think that's celebrity to me. Like just admiring that creativity in such a real way. That's for me. Those are my, like the people I follow, and I look at like, oh my god, I saw him or saw her. Like, I have those moments with such people, more than maybe
Yeah,
a famous movie star or something.
I think that's great. And I also think that it's great that you speak and understand the French language because I think it can bring so many new things to you. Like,
Hmm.
obviously, there's a lot of people who are converting things into English, but if you want the newest and most up to date information, looking at those websites in French, you'll get it much
Hmm.
faster than everybody
Oh
else.
yes,
So that's
I
very
would
good.
recommend that to anyone who even knows like slightly advanced French. Like I think it's taught me, like I look at recipes in French, I Google in French, and it's something that's really helped me under, because I think there's so many things that are lost in translation, like literally, and there's so many cultural nuances that you learn by just pushing yourself to read French media. And because, well, the kind of media I consume is mostly like lifestyle, like fashion, food, and stuff like that, it's very interesting to see how these very universal human sort of interests are also like they can have such a cultural flavor that you only realize when you read it in a native language. And French journalism is just so strong in its use of French, and a lot of French podcasts, in fact, are great to sort of practice that, not only the language, but also like get to know how they cover these topics. And it's in a much more academic way sometimes. Yes, definitely.
Yeah, I'm curious, like, what is the difference for you? What do you notice between the French and the English one? It's more academic.
It's a little bit more structured, and I feel like they go deep. Like it's very and I'm not criticizing either. I think it's just a different approach, but I think it's much more structured in terms of what they would like to cover, at least with the podcast. I think with other stuff, I think there's a little bit more of room for experimentation, and I think they're also learning from Anglophone media and how marketing and media combine, I guess, and that's its own thing. But I think with respect to podcasts, and also the ones that I listen to a variety of them. So some of them are more conversational, some of them are more like news podcasts. But I think each of them has like a much more defined sort of like purpose, and then there's room for sort of like going here and there. But I mean, there's not like too much of a difference, I would say. But if I were to name something, I think it's just a little bit more like it's a little more streamlined.
Yeah, a little more serious, maybe.
Yeah, I guess a little bit, yeah. But it also depends on like the tone that they decide to adopt. And like, for example, if it's France Culture or like France Bleu or something like that, it's just obviously it's a radio show, so it's like it has to have that kind of structure. But if it's something like just like I follow a couple of like there's a lot of these podcasts that are like interviews between with creatives or women or entrepreneurs, and so those are, I think, also a little bit structured in terms of like they have questions, like set questions, but there is a lot more space for like bringing in new ideas or like novel ways of thinking. There's not like, it doesn't look like they're like cut off for time, or they have that it's a little bit more free flowing, if you know what I mean.
For the French ones.
Yeah. So like there's different types within that. So it's nice to see like how different communities are sort of exploring the podcast as a way to communicate their ideas. And I think it's been a little bit delayed in Paris and France with the francophone media, but it's definitely picking up. Like there's so many new French podcasts I discover like every day.
Yeah, I've noticed that too, because when I first started to make this podcast, I was like, where's all the French people? And then also even making this podcast, I was really surprised at how few English podcasts were from Paris, because I was like, wow, this is because there's a million blogs of Americans or whoever living here. But yeah, it was really surprising that there's so few podcasts. So yeah, get into podcasts, people. Obviously, you're listening to our podcast, but and yeah, yay, friends. And where can people find you online and check out Art and Style?
You can find me on at Art and Style Mag on Instagram. And the and is not a symbol, it's Art and Style Mag. And that's my handle. And then you can find me online and read some of my blog posts on artandstylemag.com.
That's great. We can add it to the show notes as well. But it was so nice to chat with you today and learn more about how France has changed your life and inspired you to create this new idea. I love it.
Thank you so much for having me. It was such a pleasure to speak with you.
And hopefully we'll see you in Paris soon once all the craziness is over.
Definitely. It's the first thing I'll do. Pack my bags and come to Paris.
I look forward to it. Thanks so much for tuning in to La Vie Creative. You can find more information on MissParisPhoto.com. And if you enjoyed this show, please feel free to share and spread the word for all my creative guests. We have the power to help them to keep doing what they love. See you next time.